Hello, everyone. This is James with the Unity of Greenville. Appreciate you being with me this wonderful evening. And we're going to be discussing giants and how to deal with a giant in your life, how to disassemble a giant. Now, a giant is a metaphor for some a root issue in your life that has become gigantic, that has become bigger than what it needs to be. And so we wonder, how do things, how do the big things get to be so big? Where did Goliath come from? Well, Goliath, metaphysically, is the biggest idea of the mind. It's the strongest belief that you have at any one time. Now we know that according to the Bible, um, Goliath was 9 feet tall. Nine is the number of fullness. It takes 9 months for a baby to be born. Um, Nine is the number of fullness or completion. After 9 months, the mother's ready to give birth. So you might say it is a full grown thought form. A full grown thought form. So, what is a thought form? Well, a thought form is something that we have created with our minds. It is an idea that is coupled with a feeling that we have thought about over and over and over again, and we've given life to it by talking about it, thinking about it, and allowing it to just run rampant inside of our minds. Now, it's important for you to understand, and for all of us to understand, that we have power over our minds, especially in what we take in, what we hear, what we see with our eyes, what we take into ourselves. That is up to us. And so, what you think about, you bring about. It's important to remember that. Now, in the Bible, there's the story of David, who was a sheep herder. And David had heard about this great giant, and he was wondering why that no one had addressed him. So David, he picked up his trusty slingshot and he gathered 5 smooth stones that he picked up out of the river. And the slingshot represents your ability to focus on in a particular area or a particular thing or in a particular direction. The 5 smooth stones represent the 5 physical senses that we have. And he had picked up the stones from the river. Because after a rough rock has been in the stream for a while, all of the rough edges get smoothed off and the rocks will become more rounded. And so that is what happens inside of us, our 5 senses. As we train them, as we live our lives, they become more well rounded. You know, our taste. I don't eat the same food that I ate when I was a kid. I eat differently now. You might say that that I'm more well rounded in my eating. Just my taste. I don't, enjoy the same taste that I did at one time. Feelings. Um, what I look at with my eyes, what I listen to with my ears is not the same. Now, you could say that many of the rough edges have been smoothed away. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I'm different than I was a long time ago. So, so we have our tool. We have our focus power that we can focus our 5 senses on something, and we know that we use our 5 senses, what you see and feel and hear and meditate upon, and these things you will give life to. That's how thought forms are created. You see, in Ephesians 6:12, it says that our struggle is not against a physical opponent, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this current mindset of darkness or ignorance, against the spiritual or religious forces of wickedness in high places. Mm. So we understand that we're not dealing with people out here. Sometimes people will come to me and they say, well, this person over here is my problem. And I'm not saying that they cannot create problems for you, but many times it is something in us that has that we have brought out that which is within them. My people come to me and they say that their spouse, oh, they are the problem. If they would just change, if they would just grow up, if they would just do things differently, then I could finally be happy. We could be happy together. Well, not necessarily, because whatever in you is upset, that's what you need to explore, because that's the true root of these issues. It's not the person that you're with that is the problem. It's what you think about that person. It's how you feel about that person. It's how you see that person. It's how you listen to that person. You understand what I'm saying? It's how you use your five senses to connect with that person. And that is the real root of all issues. Once you can begin to, become more well rounded in these areas and become more understanding and see things from a bigger, broader perspective, then you can deal with these giant problems and challenges in your life. But our struggle is not against people. It's not people. They're not the problem. The problem is the way we think about them, or could be the way they think, that creates, because some people can be troublemakers, because they're so troubled within. A troubled person will create trouble and struggle for themselves. And so when you are around them, you are in agreement, you're in alignment with them to experience the same trouble many times. And so it's important that you learn to smooth out your own five senses and to become more well rounded so that you can be around people without being so influenced by um, the way they think, by their mental projections, by their emotional uh, creation of thoughts and feelings. So you don't have to be affected by the people in your life. You can learn to be more smooth, right? So I want to be smooth. Now, there's another story in the Bible, the madman of the tombs. And he was basically insane. He was mentally troubled in many, many ways. And he was constantly running around the graveyard. What does the graveyard represents? But death and separation. And he was cutting himself. He was harming himself. Whenever you hear of someone that is doing this, and this is a problem we still have today. It is a sign that a thought form of self-loathing and self-hatred has taken over their mental state to the point to where they want to cut themselves. And this is what happens when thought forms become too much to deal with in a person's life. We become overwhelmed by them. Now, when the master teacher Jesus asked the man who he was, what did he say? Well, he responded and said, we are legion and we are many. And the idea of legion is 500. So how did Jesus deal with these thought forms, or the word that was used in the Bible are spirits? They were energetic and energized thought forms. Well, Jesus, being the prophet and the healer that he was, He understood the workings of the mind and the psychology, and he was able to reset the man back to original function. And then the man was able to change his focus and thus was able to heal himself. We know that Jesus redirected the negative energy into the pigs. You know, here's the thing about pigs back in those days, they were not allowed by Jewish law, um, you know, and so that was something that was considered illegal. So, there is this idea of metaphorically the pigs represented, beings um, that were not healthy because of the trigonosis and that sort of thing. So what happened to the pigs is when the thought forms went into them, they ran over a cliff and they drowned. Now this is all symbolic. They basically destroyed themselves. Now in the Bible, the word demons is literally intelligences. And it's the idea of a way of thinking, a binding mental process. To be demonized is to be under the spell of a negative thought form or negative thought forms, plural. So whatever you obsess on constantly in your mind will grow. And after a while, will begin to take on a life of its own. But here's the thing that you need to remember. You created it, so you can disassemble it. Now, maybe there are things that you've given a lot of energy to, you've given a lot of your power, a lot of your time, a lot of your attention to. Maybe it's self-image, maybe it's a feeling of lack, maybe it's the idea that I'm unworthy, these kinds of things. Well, you can disassemble these thought forms, and I'm going to tell you how to do it in just a minute. But number one, let me share with you a few points here about how that we take on these thought forms and we create them. The first way we do it is through ideas that we willingly accepted as children, and they begin to bind us to unhealthy lifestyles. You better clean your plate. You better eat all of that food. There are people starving, and so now I'm eating through shame and through guilt. And not only do I need to eat what I need to eat, but I need to eat it all. And because I'm concerned that if I don't eat it, then I'm disrespecting the child uh, in another country or maybe in another town that doesn't have food. So it's important that as grown-ups that we don't believe everything that people tell us. There's a lot of sayings that we have that are connected to these thought forms. And one of them is cleaning your plate. I heard it when I was a kid. You better eat that food. We had to work hard for it. It doesn't come easy. And you eat what you've been given. My mother told me you have two options here: take it or leave it. All right. And so we hear these ideas, we hear these sayings, as children, and we take them to heart because we're so little, we don't know any better. And then they begin to become a thought form in our life, and we keep giving them attention, giving them thought, feeding them emotion, and after a while they get pretty hefty and pretty big. So number two, habits are made from mental and emotional attention. We must stop feeding the negative stories about ourselves. If you want to overcome in your life, you're going to have to starve your doubts. You're going to have to starve those negative stories. You're going to have to start paying attention to what you're saying, paying attention to what goes into your mind, what you're watching, what you're giving your time and your attention to. Excuse me. Sneezing is good for you because it is a release. You're letting go of something. Yeah, good stuff. So don't feed the negative story about yourself or about anyone else. When somebody comes to me and tells me something bad about someone else or something negative about someone else, well, I say, okay, I understand that's what you think, that's what you believe, that's what you feel, but I don't necessarily see it that way. And that helps the person to see, wait a minute, maybe I'm making a judgment on this person. Maybe I'm not seeing the whole picture. Maybe I'm just seeing one little aspect, and I'm being uh, um, too judgmental. So number three, ruling thought patterns can keep you in the dark in a state of unconsciousness. We have the biggest problem that America has right now is unconsciousness. The whole world has this problem. People are living in the darkness of their own unconsciousness. We're not really engaged in a positive way with our lives. We're we're criticizing and judging and blaming and accusing and you know pointing out other people as our problem rather than taking responsibility for our own lives. So those ruling thought patterns, it's important to pay attention to what you're thinking, what you're feeling in any given moment, what's going through your mind right now, how are you feeling right now, and just to have that as an ongoing habit of noticing what you are giving your attention to. It's very important. And you can decide then, maybe I don't want to give so much attention to that thought or that feeling. I've discovered that even if I feel a certain way, if I just breathe through it, I accept that it's there, that's okay. But then I shift my focus to something else and I become conscious of something else, something that's creative, something that's good, and I begin to take the air out of it. I begin to take the power away from the thought pattern, and by filling in my consciousness with good thoughts and good feelings and so forth and so on. It takes time to learn to do this. It may not happen overnight, but if you continue for 40 days to disassemble this giant, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to disassemble it in just a moment, then you can do it. Now, the fourth area is religious arrogance and bigotry. Sometimes religion can be a ruling thought pattern in people's mind. They are controlled, they're obsessed with a certain belief system, and they have a spirit or a thought form of superiority that they are better than another. And the Bible calls this spiritual wickedness in high places in spiritual realms. So I don't want any part of that. How about you? Superiority is the biggest trap in spirituality that there is. This is a big giant. This is one that needs to be disassembled. This is one that needs to be dissolved, that needs to be let go. There are no super God's kids that are better than other of God's children. You know, one religion is not more right than another religion. Okay, every culture has adapted a way of seeing and perceiving the divine. And who are we to say that they are incorrect, that they are wrong? As a matter of fact, I've learned a lot by studying and researching what other people believe and looking at it. And after a while, I begin to see, we really don't believe that differently. When you really get down to rock bottom, you begin to see that we all have the golden rule. And we all know that love is the priority, that love is what it's really all about. It's not about superiority, it's about love becoming the priority. And that's the answer to that. Now, the key point in all of this is if you stop feeding the giant with your fearful attention, it will begin to fall away. The only reason the giant is so big is because you keep giving it attention. You keep talking about it, you keep thinking about it, you keep feeling it. And so what you have to do is you have to pull your powerful attention away from those old thought forms and focus on something new and creative, using your positive energy in a new way, in a new thought. As a matter of fact, that's why we are called New Thought, because we are not focused on that old stinking thinking. We want a new thought that takes us out of those old thought patterns, and we want to live in a new way, a new lifestyle, you know, a new way of being in the world. And after a while, the Goliath begins to fall away, and David becomes, the hero of the story. You know where David hit the giant? He hit him right between the eyes. Yeah, you think about that. That's where we think. That's where we um, uh, create these thought patterns. Is right between the eyes. In our minds, in our brains. And so he took one of those five smooth stones and he shot it, and boom, he did away with the giant and fell over, and there was the removal of the head, which was a practice in those days. But the thing of it is, it's all metaphorical. Don't look at these things literally. Try to understand what the truth is behind it, and it will give you something good, and you'll be able to see what it's really about. And so you can be the David by no longer feeding the giant with your fearful attention. You take away your attention, take away your thinking about, your talking. Don't talk about it anymore. Stop with the old stories. Stop with the poor me attitude. Stop with the lack, speech. Stop with this and begin to refocus and change your thinking. Get a new thought. Move in a new direction. Use your creative powers to focus on something new and different and creative, and stay with that and stay with that and stay with that for at least 40 days, and that giant will get so small that it will no longer be the strongest belief in your mind. As a matter of fact, your new belief will become the strongest belief in your mind. And now you feel good about yourself. Now I'm worthy. Now I love myself. I appreciate myself. Now, I have love not only for me, but for you and for everybody else too. And it's a beautiful thing. So that's how you disassemble a giant. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. It's like the old saying, about eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. Not that I would want to eat an elephant, but you understand that it's a metaphor, ladies and gentlemen. It's a metaphor. And that's how you disassemble the giant. All right. Well, I trust that this was helpful for you today. If you'll apply this and use these points in your life, you need to write them down. You need to think about them. You need to meditate on them. You need to use them in your life. And if you will do that, you will discover a power inside of you, and you'll be able to deal with other thought forms that maybe are there that you need to deal with. Maybe you have a legion, you know, and you need a reset. The way you reset is just to meditate and go back to a state of peace. And you reset yourself. And then when you start to think, you're focused on your thoughts or focused on your feelings. Then you direct that powerful mind of yours and you use it in a positive way to change your life. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm grateful for you today. I'm grateful for the way that you and we're learning, we're growing, we're becoming stronger each and every day. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Appreciate you being with me. If you'd like to make a donation to our community, go to unitychurchofgreenville.org. You can make a donation there. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your consistency and your giving, or even if it's a one time you heard this and you say, hey, I like what I heard. I want to help you guys. And then, we appreciate it. It goes to support our community and our growth and our continued work that we do here. All right. So I'll be back in the morning and we're going to do part 2 of uh, prosperity and good fortune, part 2. And that's tomorrow morning at right around 10:30. So look forward to seeing you then. You take care of yourself and we'll see you soon.